80 new clients after working with a mentor. This number can't be right, can it? Dane, is this number right?
It is right. Fortunately, yes, it is. It's very correct.
Okay. I need to hear the story, and so do our listeners. This is Two Brain Radio. I'm your host, Mike Warkentin. Please subscribe and hit like wherever you're watching or listening. Now, Dane McCarthy is my guest. He runs West Village Athletic. He's in New York City, in Manhattan, not far from the Empire State Building. So without further ado, we're going to get right into it because I know you want to know the answer that I want to know also. Dane, how did you add 80 new clients in 30 days?
Yeah, we really just followed the two brain formula. I had a really great mentor, Russell, and one of the most
Russell
Francis, yeah. And one of the first things we did, I think a second week, was develop a sales playbook that clearly articulated what we sell and why we sell it, and put that into, I think we call the sales binder, create a sales binder, and followed the process. We created no sweat intros. We called them just intros, ran our clients through the binder and had incredible success.
So this was all through the Two Brain Ramp Up program, or when did you, and if so, when did you start that?
That's right. I started the Ramp Up program late last year, but really only in anger, kind of in the start of the new year. Fairly.
Tell me why in anger. I'm going to ask that one.
Yeah, I think I signed up to Two Brain thinking, there'll be some good tidbits in there and they'll throw me some content that I could use. I wasn't expecting the breadth of information and the seriousness to which I had to kind of apply myself to implementing it. So when I kind of grasped that there was some real actions and I had to implement serious changes to the gym, that's when I started seeing real results, when I started really implementing the changes.
Yeah. And one of the reasons I want to get you on the show is that Chris Cooper and the Two Brain staff are always improving our program. So Ramp Up, which used to be called Incubator, has evolved, and now it's designed to be a very swift sprint, which you've experienced, and to get some action and some wins right away. So in 30 days, you got 80 new clients, which is incredible. As you were seeing this happen, what was your thought process? What was your brain seeing it? I've never got 80 clients in a year, let alone a month.
Yeah, I mean, I was shocked, because I have, the way we were doing it is we were just sending broad messages out through Instagram to people being like, hey, would you like to join the gym? And then we'd provide a link to sign up directly, from our Instagram or our website. And what that did is it meant that we didn't have control over the process. We were just kind of sending things out and hoping it'd stick. And it did. It got us to 50, 70 clients. But having a direct call to action that resulted in a call that allowed us to properly articulate our value proposition and explain why we thought it was a really good thing for these people who were interested was really just the tipping point. And then as soon as that happened, we just started closing members really frequently.
So that was a switch in your intake process. What did you do before, as opposed to a consultation or an introduction?
Yeah, before we were just posting on Instagram, and then we had a really convoluted website where they would go to the website, they had to select which squad, and we can talk about how we're a little bit different in our training style, but they had to go and select their squad, click into it, and then buy on MindBody. There was no one really holding their hand or guiding them. So I think people going on the website, they're a little bit confused. They didn't really understand why we were different. But it was working. So I didn't really think that it could do any better, until I sat with Russell and he kind of was like, well, maybe there's a different way of doing that.
Your experience isn't that different from mine, because back, when I started my gym, I think in 2010, we had a similar thing where we had a, confusing website, too many options, too many things where people would just show up, and we weren't doing any advertising or outreach at that point. This was early on when there were only a few CrossFit gyms, right? So we would just expect people to find us, which they did. And then they would click through our convoluted website and they would maybe sign up or they would call us or something like that. But we didn't have that process. Putting in place that process of sitting down with people and saying, what are you interested in? What are your goals? What do you need? And then giving them a plan in that no sweat intro or free consultation model. It really helped us diversify our revenue streams, where some people wanted personal training, some wanted nutrition, some wanted both, some wanted group. And then the other thing it did is it really allowed us to, tailor our service to their goals and build the value proposition, which helped us close more sales. So is that kind of the same experience that you had, almost word for word?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And a really important part of that was the sales binder.
Mm-hmm.
Going through that exercise, like the binder is what the binder is, but going through the exercise of putting down on paper, what is it that we're selling and why is it valuable, was a really good exercise for myself and my coaches. They were the ones who took the calls and did the great job on bringing members on. And they could only do that because we had clearly articulated what we were selling.
Okay.
So yeah, spot on.
And Dane, what Dane's talking about here, listeners, is the sales binder or pricing binder, whatever you want to call it, is a booklet, or it can be an iPad presentation that you use to guide people through these consultation processes. And it lays out your offers very clearly. It helps you showcase your value. And it's not a gigantic 38-page thing. It's very short, very concise, very pointed. And the act of putting it together, which we lead you through in Ramp Up, will help you clarify what you are actually selling. Because a lot of people, oddly enough, don't actually know. I thought I was selling fitness and CrossFit and sweat and vomit, when in fact I was actually selling coaching. And when you start to realize that, your value goes up and you can ask people for $300 a month, not just $79.99 for equipment access and so forth. So Dane, we're going to dig into this stuff a little bit more, but tell me a little bit about the history of your gym. How long have you been around? What's your deal? What kind of training styles do you do? Give me the backstory.
Yeah, great. No, I appreciate you giving me that opportunity. So
yeah.
we started West Village Athletic kind of during the pandemic. It was a bunch of Australian expats, all working full time, and we're just a bit lonely. So we started working out together outdoors. And the insight we had when training here in the US is that the training style is great. It's intense, it's fun, it's really entertaining, but in some cases it's quite transactional. So what we did is we tried to emulate the training style which we have back at home, back in Australia, which is you train with your 10, 15 closest mates. Mm-hmm. So what makes us different is when you join WVA, you join a training squad. You join that squad twice a week. You have a dedicated coach that oversees the progress of the squad itself and the members within it. And why we think that's so valuable is it gives people an opportunity to get to know the people they're training with, become accountable to one another, enjoy training, and kind of get more from just the training than the physical, but also the holistic mental and social elements as well.
Does that come from a military background, or is that something you guys came up with outside that?
No, it's certainly not military. I played rugby back at home.
Okay.
So really, that's just how we trained when we were training rugby. And I think a lot of people in America can relate to that because there's a lot of college athletes, a lot of high school sports. People finish and they're like, now what? I haven't got a group of people to train with anymore. I haven't got a team. So it's certainly just a lift and shift from my rugby days, to be honest.
Okay. And so you opened during the pandemic in 2020?
Yep, that's right. Yeah.
In Manhattan, no less. So there's a bit of pressure on you probably financially, I'm guessing.
Yeah, it was a scary leap to take. I mean, this is certainly not my full-time job. I have a full-time job that I love and I work at. What we did is there was a place that was going under just during the pandemic. We were able to negotiate a really good lease to maintain it as a gym. Okay. So we took that over and we started very small scale. Our squads were 5 people deliberately so that we could contact trace. And then as COVID restrictions started to lift, we got the squads built out a little bit more, and we hired coaches and a general manager who runs the day-to-day of the gym.
Do you do PT as well, or nutrition, or is it just these squads? Or is nutrition based into that?
Yeah, this was another thing that I got from Two Brains. I mean, our revenue stream was really one-dimensional. We were just selling these squads. As part of the sales binder process, we added PT, and I was honestly really like, I don't know, it's not really our thing. And we sold a whole lot of those, and it's because people are looking for it. They're looking for more personalized training. And so by offering that, we brought on 5 or 6 as part of those 80 members, PT, which diversified our revenue stream completely.
I imagine that in your area, busy Manhattan people, there's probably a convenience factor that appeals to the PT crowd where it's like, I can't make that squad, but do you have a slot at, 2 p.m. on Wednesday, right?
Yeah, spot on. And then there's other people who've come out of the pandemic who are, they just fell behind a little bit in their fitness routines, and they were looking for a bit of a jump start in their training. So we had a lot of people really successfully do some PT, kind of get to a level where they felt comfortable to jump in with the squad.
So why did you said, we talked a little bit about this earlier, and you said there was some anger, which I thought was hilarious, but tell me more about why you decided to do the ramp up, and what was the process like when you started up with Russell?
Yeah, I mean, we decided to do the mentoring because this isn't my full-time job. And so I was really needing to be more efficient
right.
with managing the gym, right? This was just before we had hired a GM. So my workload, the gym was increasing and I needed to kind of be more efficient. So started looking around for help. And really, I was just intrigued by just getting access to Russell Francis, because he had been a similar thing. He'd worked full-time in finance. And so I was really just interested in the mentorship alone.
And he's just over in Jersey, close to you guys, right?
That's right. Yeah. And he's got 2 gyms and he's an expat as well. So I thought it would be great just to have a yarn to a bloke who's done something similar. I think he was full-time when he started. So that was all I was really interested in. It wasn't until I started speaking to the guys over there that I realized there was a bit more to it than just mentoring. And so that's when I made the decision to jump on board.
So at what point did you realize that this was working? Like, obviously you're selling memberships, but were there other points where you're like, aha, because it's not just like the ramp up is all about systems and staffing and everything, rules and procedures and tasks and some of the boring, like quote unquote, making, procedures and playbooks and things like that. There is some work involved, but at what point were you like, wow, this is a rocket ship and we're moving now?
Yeah, I think it's on that first 1 or 2 calls that we had, where there was members who were looking to join the gym, and I had such a clearly stated proposition. I was like, wow, okay, this is all I really needed to do. We were doing so many good things, but we hadn't packaged it or created a process to execute on it. And so it was kind of well before we signed 80. It was probably in the first 5 that I was like, yeah, okay, this is just the consolidation that I needed of all the things that we were already doing.
Do you have any other metrics that you wouldn't mind sharing? Is there anything else you can tell me besides the 80 members that, and you've mentioned you added some staff members and things like that? What else you got?
Yeah, well, diversifying our revenue was really important. The I think the metric is what Two Brain used. I don't know if you'll explain that, but making sure that we were getting we're providing more value to our members across different services.
So that's average revenue per member per month for listeners. That's ARM as we refer to it. And a bigger number is better, both usually for the client and the gym, because the client is getting healthier faster. That's
right. So our top line grew significantly. Russell really challenged me on our price point. Unsurprisingly, we started outdoor training and it was a bunch of mates really just mucking around, So our price point was really just to cover costs of hiring a PT to train us. So we were very low. And the first thing Russell did was said, okay, the new members that you bring on, let's change that price point so that you can be sustainable going forward, pay your coaches more and make sure the gym lasts. So
how much did you add to the price?
$20.
$20. And was it a difficult sell for you in your mind? Because some gym owners, when they do a price increase, they're like, wow, I can't sell this. Was it for you like difficult to do that? And did you get some confidence when you made those sales, or how'd that process go in your mind?
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, I certainly didn't go for the rate that was recommended by Russell and Two Brain. I was still so nervous. It's so challenging, especially because we're mates with the guys that we started training with.
Right.
So there's that real personal thing that you've got to kind of separate. And I think we've got a lot more upside there. In fact, that is going to be a big focus point for the next part of the mentorship. The changing to 165. I think the process that was described by Russell was, for your new members coming on, change the rate and see how it feels. So we managed to do that with all these new members, and then I think we'll probably have to do a rate hike at some point, just so that we and that process has been tested. And I'm sure Russell explained it to you. I'll just give it to the listeners. But the reason why it's like that is that when you raise the rates for new people coming in, there's no fear. Well, there's less fear because they don't know the rates are different. They just see the rates. And if you start making a few sales at those rates, which everyone does, because we all tend to undervalue ourselves, all of a sudden you realize people see the value. This is what it costs. They're not telling me it's too expensive. They realize that this is valuable. That gives you the confidence often to correct some errors. And I had to do this exact same thing because I priced myself way too low. That gives you the confidence to then correct it for your current members. And there is a step-by-step plan a mentor will guide you through if you need to do that. And there is also a calculation where we have you do it in steps if you need to go up a lot or in certain amounts. So it's like, we don't say, okay, double rates to $250 from 125 and lose all your members. It is not like that. There are some steps to that process. So that's interesting. When are you thinking about doing that? Is that within this year? Yeah, I think so. I think we will need to kind of do it at the end of the year. And what I needed to get over was the mental hurdle. So in calculating the arm, we really shone a light on my unit economics and was it going to be a viable gym 10 years down the track?
Right.
When we went through that process, I realized, hey, I won't be able to service any of my clients if we don't raise the rates, and that's a net loss for everyone involved. So that going through the calculation of what is required to be a sustainable gym was the most valuable process, not necessarily the rate itself.
Yeah. And it's great that you're talking about this stuff, because when I started my gym and when other people started theirs, they didn't do any financial calculations. Right. We kind of do, like I did something similar to you where I was working out with my buddies in the gym, right? And then, or in the garage, and then we started a gym. But I didn't really do those calculations and ask, can I sustain this long term? And it wasn't until I realized I couldn't, then I found Two Brain, that I made those corrections. So it's great that you're asking these questions now. Let me ask you this, because like everyone knows, Manhattan is a crazy place in terms of rent and lease and all that stuff. How much space have you got there?
Yeah, we're small. We've got about 1,200 square feet.
Yeah. Okay. But it's still Manhattan. So that carries a load to it, and you've got to pay the bills. So obviously there's financial calculations. You got to make sure that you do them. Whereas, where I was, it was a little easier because we had low rent in a warehouse district of a city that no one ever visits. So I was able to make a few more mistakes. So good for you for figuring it out sooner than I did.
Yeah. I actually, and I read this from all around them. Like it was quite comforting to know that in New York City, I was thinking, goodness, we're going to have to spend a whole lot of money on equipment, and we're going to have flashy lights, and we're going to have influencers and all this kind of jazz, and realize that's not what people are buying. And I think that's really clearly stated in Two Brains is people are looking for coaching, they're looking for companionship, they're looking for accountability. Whether or not you have 20 assault bikes or 10 doesn't really matter,
Isn't that a money-saving realization, right? Where you're like, I don't have to blow $1 million on all the stuff you mentioned. I just need, and Chris has done this video where he's like, I need maybe a plyo box, maybe a barbell, maybe a skipping rope and a dumbbell or something. Obviously you can scale that up based on your model, but you can get effective results just with that. And then starting small, which Chris has also recommended, allows you to become profitable, hit break even, and then become profitable much faster, then scale up. And if you need more space at that point, it's not quite as scary, right?
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, New York in space is just such a valuable asset.
Right.
We had to trade it. I would like to say we had the room to go and add all this equipment. We didn't. So we were kind of hamstrings. Like we can only have 2 bikes. So that's what we're going to have to make do with.
I'm waiting for someone to put a barge on the Hudson River and use that as a gym, right? Just float that around. I'm sure the city's figured out some way to permit the hell out of that. But
get permitted, there'll be heavy rent on it. Yeah.
But that's someone will do it someday, or a hovercraft or something to get around the municipal guidelines. Talk to me about implementation of changes. In wrap up, did you have to do any other stuff with like roles and tasks and staffing? And if so, like how did the staff respond to that? Or how did, if you have co-owners or partners, how did they respond to all these changes?
Yeah, we did have to make some big changes there. I've always had someone running the gym, and I've never actually trained any classes, just because at 8 a.m. I have to clock off and do my full-time job.
Yeah.
So always had those roles in place, but never had formalized roles, responsibilities, processes for ensuring that we were delivering the product that we wanted to deliver. So we certainly did. And I think that was a lesson. I approached Two Brain being like, oh, I'm going to smash. I think I said to Russell, I was like, oh, I'll smash this out in 2 months and I'll be ready to go. And he kind of just nodded. And I realized I had to slow it right down. Like each week I kind of did over 3 weeks to make sure that I could implement it. And we took big gaps between calls just to make sure that I was getting the most value from those calls, because we had to create a sales binder. That took me two weeks to do it really properly, because I had to really change my approach to selling. That was a really big one. And then also we had to come up with a playbook, a staff playbook. And that's not a small task if you do it properly. Sure, you can throw some stuff on paper, but if you take it seriously, it does take some time. So certainly had to slow things down and really implement.
Did you find that playbook to be a grind to create?
Yeah, I don't know if we use a software called Trainial, and I just used all the content that was on Two Brain and put it on Trainial. Yeah. It made things so much easier. If people aren't using Trainial, it's great because it just made the process of, roles and responsibilities, here's a role. And then I just allocated it virtually to my staff. And then I can add stuff to that.
Okay, that's interesting. And the reason I ask if it's a grind is because I know that roles and tasks are one of those things a lot of people avoid. It's not sexy. It's not sales. It's not marketing. It's not training. It's not, buying equipment. It's one of those like sitting down with a pen or a laptop or whatever and grinding out who takes out the garbage at what time and, all the boring stuff. Right. But, Chris Cooper has talked about this and it actually is 100% true, even for those who don't want to admit it. The roles and tasks and systems, they're the foundation of the business. You can't do the sexy stuff without that basis. Like, did you find once you had those roles and tasks in place and you had built this rock solid foundation that it allowed you to scale much faster?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm not going to say that we're there yet. There's still some work, and that's an iterative process. I had to change my mind. I like this whole experience. I had to change my mindset around it to get excited to do the playbook, because it's boring. You're writing out roles and responsibilities and you're writing out, okay, a member comes into class, what do you need to do? Treat them as soon as they come in, turn the lights on. So that was certainly grind. But when I was like, okay, this is what's gonna, there was one quote, you can take a gym and you can buy a job, or you can own a gym, and I certainly can't afford to buy a job because I've already got one, So when I was like, okay, this is great, I'm creating a proper gym here by having roles and responsibilities, then I got excited about it and I was able to do it. So I changed the mindset, was great. And then I also saved a lot of frustration I was having towards my staff. I was going like, why don't they just do this? This is so annoying. Come in. And then I was like, when I was writing it out, I was thinking the reason they're not doing it is because I've never told them that's what I think is important. So I was getting frustrated at them. They didn't know why I was getting frustrated. And it was a mirror that got put up to me where I was like, all right, Dan, you got to be a bit more specific in what you're asking.
Yeah. And we've kind of led parallel lives where I had the same thing. I've always had a job when I had a business on the side. And so for me to offload tasks, I struggled with it and I did a poor job. And the reason was exactly what you said. I just assumed people would do it the way that I thought it should be done. So whenever there was a shortcoming, it was ultimately my fault because I hadn't put a policy and a procedure in place. And so I did the exact same exercise where I came up with this large staff manual that had everything where it's like, when you open the back door, be sure to unplug the alarm cable first so you don't tear it out, like stuff like that. And you can imagine why I put that in there, because it got torn out at some point, right? Right. But it's all those little things.
Right. And I was extremely lucky. Like, I have the most incredible staff. Shout out to Jamie, Katie, Mackenzie, Mitch, Brenna, all incredible at what they do. And the process of creating some like SOPs, I'm not a gym person, I don't know how to train people. So I sent it to them and they looked at it and provided me some pretty fair feedback. Like, Dane, that doesn't make sense. Why would we do this? They're the professionals. We changed it together. So then they had ownership over the experience we're providing our clients. And so of course they're going to implement it because they were part of it. So you've got buy-in there right away. You've got staff buy-in. Yeah. And I'm more than happy to outsource to that team because they're so good at what they do. And then we could ensure that the changes we made commercial sense for the gym, and it made practical sense for training. And then together we were able to come up with a pretty good process. Okay. That's fascinating. Tell me about the plan going forward. You mentioned maybe a rate increase at some point or whatever, but what else have you got going on? Like, what are the next big steps that you and Russell are working on? And how did you guys decide that these were the big steps that would move the needle next? Yeah. Number one, getting our unit economics to make more sense. Explain unit economics. What's that? In that our revenue needs to be higher. Okay. We need to make more money, and we need to reduce costs that don't make sense, throw out stuff that is not working for us, and diversify our revenue streams through nutrition, PT, squad classes, and private squads. So ensuring that we're just more viable going forward. So what's the big next move? Is it going to be like adding nutrition, or what do you do next? Yeah, without giving away too much to my members who might listen to this. You keep secrets as you need to. That's cool. We'll probably have to do a member hike, a raise on our prices. I think they know that's coming. They've been paying very low membership for some time. So that's going to be the big one. And making sure that we do that responsibly and in a way that's not going to offside our members is definitely the next step. And I'll tell you this, like I went through that exact same process, and we had our rates in place for 8 years, maybe 9 years, and they were way too low. I knew that 6 years before I put the rate increase in place. And that was literally a 6-figure mistake. I literally put the numbers in our software and said, in 2013, I'm going to do this. I never did.
and it cost us at least $100,000 in lost revenue. Then when I did it, I was so scared, but I had the support of Two Brain. I had the, my peers in the growth group, and then I had the mentor. When we did it, our members actually said, like, thank you. It's about time you did that. We were worried you guys were not going to make it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And I want our staff to have an incredible career.
And there's that.
Yeah. And I want them to be well paid. I want them to have health insurance. I want them to love being part of what we're building. And the only way we can do that is to pay them market rate. And in New York, it's expensive, and they do some really great work for us. So they deserve to be paid more, and they deserve to be paid over the long term for it to be a sustainable thing. So I think that's going to be the next step, is ensuring that we can get people to salaried employees and that kind of stuff.
Step after that, is that going to be revenue diversification? If so, is it going to be PT or nutrition first?
I think for us, PT is really important. It's a great way to fill in the gaps. Our real estate utility isn't great. We load up between 6 a.m. and 9 a.m.
Yeah.
We have a big dark spot when everyone runs off to work or goes crazy. So we can load that with PT to get more out of our rent spend. Nutrition's been an interesting one. We launched it. I think we can do a better job with it. And we need to tailor it, I think, to a New York appetite. Certainly. But yeah, PT is definitely the next revenue stream. But then in terms of next big goals, I think if we can get a general manager in place we have a general manager in place, but have a general manager operating another studio, that would be the next step.
Okay, so that's cool. And one of the things I'm excited is to hear where you go from here, because I know that gyms, and I was one of them again, that mostly focused on group training. When we started diversifying into personal training and nutrition, everything changed. And like Jolene Bingham, who's one of our mentors who also runs gyms, she at one point, I forget the exact numbers, but she was almost exclusively group training. Over COVID, she changed her model, really emphasized PT. And now that I believe is like 60 or 70% of her revenue or something, a very high number, where she's added a whole new stream that's significant. So I'm really excited to see what you do once you start getting these other programs in place. And then the final part of that is that hybrid memberships are sort of where that ARM number really gets kind of cool, right? We talked to some of our gym owners. Some listeners will be like, I could never charge $340 for a monthly service, but I've talked to many gym owners now. Their ARM is well over 300, and it's usually a combination of group training plus nutrition and or PT plus nutrition. And those services are highly valuable because it's one-on-one, very personal service. It really does amazing things for the gym. So like, Dane, I can't wait to talk to you again and find out where you're at after you get this stuff in place, because it could be, again, the rocket ship's going up.
Yeah, definitely.
Last thing I'll ask you, people out here are listening, and I always like to talk to gym owners. I'm wearing a Two Brain hat, obviously. And so I'm, going to tell you the program's great, but I like to have gym owners on here who explain it as real people. If a gym owner out there is thinking like, I don't know if mentorship would work for me, what would be your advice to that person?
Yeah, I mean, without just sounding like an absolute zealot, I'd be all for it. I got so much value from it, particularly Russell. He was just great, very down to earth delivery of mentorship. It wasn't this big brother kind of thing. We just had a chat, and we talked through how it might work. And then, like most gym owners, I'm good at spending time with members, and I love that part of it. And so creating a process and a system just allows me to do more of the stuff that I like and less time focused on kind of the boring stuff. And that's because I was able to systemize it, create a process, or offload it where possible. So absolutely worth the money. I think we made back what we're paying for it in the first session, just with the sales binder. So
wow. Yeah. And that's what I was going to ask you, because people look at price tag of mentorship, and I know you're a finance guy, so you were obviously looking for return on investment. Safe to say that you got what you were looking for.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, without a doubt. Yeah. And I was ready for it to just be a sunk cost. Like I was ready for it to be a cost to me that I thought was going to be worth it just by building my network in New York with someone who had done this before me. But like I said, the ROI was positive within the first month.
Wow. Okay. That's cool. So you were kind of just looking to hang out with Russell a little bit. And it turns out you made some money off of it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Now I'm really blowing up Russell in this call. He's going to think I want to date him or something after this.
Well, you know what? I'll tell you this on the other end. I was chatting with Russell on Slack just about this before this call, and he said he had nothing but good things to say about you. So he has the same level of respect for you, my friend.
Great. So good to know.
Thank you so much for your time, Dane. That was Dane McCarthy on Two Brain Radio. I'm your host, Mike Workington. I'm all about telling the stories of amazing gym owners just like Dane. Please subscribe for more episodes. And if you're on YouTube, hammer that like button too. I appreciate that a great deal.